everybody wants transparency, and they were transparent, and now everybody doesn't like that.
Well, I think first and foremost, I really respected Elton Sawyer's answer when he said they just missed it.
It's just a tough situation. All I know is at the end of the day, I don't want to see judgment calls.
Sometimes things slip through the cracks, and you get mad at them, and then a week later, everybody seems to forget about them.
I didn't see any issue with what happened personally.
But I think holistically, you'd like to solve for challenges like that. Just being careful that you don't fall into the natural law of unintended consequences that seems to follow that.
You're at a disadvantage at times when you have a box like that, because you're at the mercy of, if I don't go at the first line and you wait further into the box, well, what happens if the guy in second goes?
Sometimes you got to push the envelope a little bit.
It's a lose-lose situation. So at the end of the day, that's racing.
It's racing, man. I mean, Denny did what he had to do.
I totally understand the challenge that those guys must face in trying to pick a path for this challenge. It's the challenge of the week, and to be honest, if that's the worst challenge we have coming out of Richmond, I think we probably had a pretty good week.
Are you guys satisfied, both of you, with the way that NASCAR is policing restarts late or even earlier in the race?
Go ahead, light it up, bud, or if you want me to.
Yeah, I didn't see any issue with what happened personally. I think it's really easy, and I've raced a lot of short tracks, and I've raced a lot of different rules, restart lines, restart zones, all these different things, and it's really easy to just completely handicap the leader. And I think there's got to be some flexibility there. I think the leader is a leader for a reason. He needs to have the right to control the restart, and a lot like what Denny said. You're kind of, a lot of times you're judging what you're going to do as the leader based off of the car in second, the car in third, and like he said, if these guys are laid back, trying to time the run, they're all trying to time it right, and sometimes you got to push the envelope a little bit to not, basically just to not, end up getting screwed out of the lead, really. I think in a way is the best way to put it. I think, just in general, I just think it's all really blown out of proportion. I don't think that it's that big of a deal. I don't think that there needs to be data and policing. We need to have flexibility, and drivers need to be able to race and make decisions. And I think just as easy, if you wanted to make a call over a couple feet of going early in the restart zone or before the restart zone, I think you just as easily make the same call if somebody's laid back 3 feet versus 2 feet. It's just open. I don't think there's a big issue with the restarts. So to me, it's just kind of blown out of proportion.
And to that point, any short track I've ever gone to, you're at a disadvantage at times when you have a box like that, because you're at the mercy of, if I don't go at the first line and you wait further into the box, well, what happens if the guy in second goes and has a nose out there, and then it's not called? Well, now you've lost an advantage. Or if you wait and then Joey rolls up and has momentum on you and pulls out at the start-finish line, you get put 3 wide going into 1. It's a lose-lose situation. So at the end of the day, that's racing. To what it is, and I would have done the same thing.
If you go late in the box, third place, gonna run into you, then you spin the tires, and the guy on the outside goes by, and everybody says, "Oh, he spun his tires," right? Because he got hit from behind, because the guy behind you is trying to time. It's racing, man.
Yeah.
Denny did what he had to do.
Can you give me a sense of, in those situations, the lead car is called the control car, but like what Denny had said, what you guys are talking about, can you give me a sense of how much control you have if you're outside of the control car or you're directly behind? Because the way you describe it, again, not being in the situation, it sounds like, I'd almost say maybe the guy behind has like a 25% actual control of the restart because of how he lays back or what he does, type of thing. Can you give me a better sense of how much the control car really has control, and if it changes from short track to the bigger tracks? Maybe it's a little bit different in that sense.
Yeah, it definitely changes from track to track for sure, right? Anytime that second, third, and everyone on back has an idea of where you are going to start that race, I mean, you can predict it, right? And I don't know. It's just a tough situation. All I know is at the end of the day, I don't want to see judgment calls. I mean, I'm a purist, and definitely we're going to go race, right? And we all know how to perform restarts and do them. We know when there's games now. I don't want to see a guy leading that in the middle of 3 and 4 decides to pick it up 10 miles an hour and then step on the brake. You know, that's something you do when you race go-karts or quarter midgets. You know, when you get into full-size race cars, when you know there's a box, you just consistent pace and then go. But certainly I'm a fan of not having calls, you know, in for a situation like that.
Should they wave them off sometimes, though, like they do say at Bowman Gray, where they say, nope, not a clean start, let's do it again? Is that something that sort of
I
gets
don't
to that
know.
point without it being a big penalty on the guy if he does jump?
You know, I mean, that's a thing, right? In short tracks, you know, that's for sure a thing that I've seen happen. I've had happen to me. But I don't know. I just don't know that that's the right move for us, right? I think we're all more professional than that to have to, like, try to explain why, you know, there was a redo or a warning and not, you know, I don't really know that it changes the outcome, right? I think everybody, if they'd have called that one back, gave Denny a warning, then everybody would still be just up in arms as they are right now, I guess.
Should a green white checker be policed differently than restart at different stages in the race, or does it bother you that they said that it might have been a different call if it was at lap 50 as opposed to the end of the race? Because if they called it then, they probably would have had to wait till the end of the race, and then what do? You say, look on as the winner? Like, should they be policed differently, and does it bother you that it does kind of seem to be that way?
I mean, I think we all feel like they definitely are policed differently. I think the reality of it is that they just were, everybody wants transparency, and they were transparent, and now everybody doesn't like that.
Yeah.
Right? I think we kind of know that if you just jump the opening start, you're more likely to get a penalty than if it's racing for the lead. I don't know if, you know, everybody's going to have a different opinion if that's right or wrong, but I think that's a thing. And as a driver, you feel like that's a thing. So, you know, I don't know.
I think the biggest thing is consistency, right? So then moving forward, we know how it's set. I think going into this week, if the same situation happens, don't make a, I don't know, every situation is different, but at least I know where we stand if I'm in that situation. I hope I know.
Yeah, I think it just all depends on the track too, like we were saying earlier. You know, short tracks obviously different because your launch and having space out the back is more beneficial. I mean, if a lot of the places that if you launch early, you're actually at a disadvantage. I mean, if you're at Michigan and you jump the last restart and you get 2 car lengths out from the car behind you, then the outside row, if they're hooked up, they're just going to push right past you. So, I mean, every restart's different. I think this is just a unique scenario. I don't think that there's too much to be made. I think it's just too much being made of it.
And maybe this is a silly question because the leader's a leader because in theory they're the best car. But you guys talk about the challenges and in one sense kind of a disadvantage and saying, hey, you've got to take off at a certain point. How does the leader keep the lead then? And maybe it's being oversimplified, but it just sounds like there's a
lot that goes into it that you guys don't realize.
Well,
that's
yeah.
racecraft. That's what you hear
Yeah.
Denny talk about. That's what you hear a lot of us talk about. And that's where guys that have won races and start up there, they talk about how to be a winner and handle situations like that because it's so much more than just going out and making laps up front. This is what you and I have done our entire career, and we've won a lot of races, so we've been in those situations. So the day when we are in those situations again, we're ready for them.
Mm-hmm.
We understand it, but that's where it comes into play.
But is the situation different in this type of playoff system where, like, I mean, if you're in this situation, like your whole seat, like, I mean, it could be the difference between making the playoffs
Yeah.
and finishing 23rd, 24th, 25th in points. So, or is a race and a win's a win, and that's not really, that doesn't add to the pressure in that situation.
I think I'll think back to last year at Richmond. I was running third on that last restart. Could I have taken Chris 3 wide into 1 and done it completely dirty? Probably would. And I would say it weighs on you sometimes, but I know who I am as a race car driver and what I want to be, and I don't want to be the guy that, some people might say, well, then you don't want it bad enough, but I definitely do. It's just there's a way I'm going to do it. But to your point, yeah, one race, I mean, you could have the way racing seems to be now is you can have an absolutely terrible season, but if you win one race and you were in the playoffs, man, think about how good he did, right? But then if you get rid of the playoffs and you get rid of that one race and you look at the whole picture, you can take a deeper dive into things.
Considering recent topics of Richmond, do you understand the rule for restart and where you can go and where you can't go? And I guess beyond that, like, would you like to see NASCAR be like, either they use cameras for other things and stuff. Should they have cameras and put a timing line there and know? Or is it good that there is some judgment and maybe a little bit of consideration of what other cars are doing when they make that call?
Well, I think first and foremost, I really respected Elton Sawyer's answer when he said they just missed it. I think that's okay. I think that happens in sports. Ideal scenario, we don't have to ever put them in a position where, an official has to make a decision. We have all the technology and all the things where everything is just black and white. But the world's not that perfect, and the technology to do everything is hard to ascertain and to make foolproof. So, sometimes things slip through the cracks, and you get mad at them, and then a week later everybody seems to forget about them. But I think holistically, you'd like to solve for challenges like that. Just being careful that you don't fall into the natural law of unintended consequences that seems to follow that. And I saw Chad Little a few weeks ago, and we were sharing a joke at COTA with respect to track limits and things of that nature of this is what happens when you have definitive, perfect technology. You end up with 20-some penalties or 40-some penalties over a race weekend. So I think COTA was a perfect example of how this can go the other way, where you have technology to solve challenges. You remove some of the or you create black and white and remove some of the gray judgment calls, and people don't like that either. So I totally understand the challenge that those guys must face in trying to pick a path for this challenge. It's the challenge of the week, and to be honest, if that's the worst challenge we have coming out of Richmond, I think we probably had a pretty good week.
Ryan, go back to the idea you said a minute ago about working, Stewart Haas Racing, you guys all working together as a group. How different is that compared to years past? Maybe just changing that philosophy of everybody trying to be one.
I'm not saying that anybody, that what they weren't before. I've just noticed it more so this year than in years past. I think we're all a lot of younger drivers that we didn't do the testing or some of the other stuff that some of the veterans have done in the past. So we really need to lean on each other to find a balance or a direction for more speed and more consistent speed.
So is that going to be beneficial, you think, in the long run? You guys be working more close together? Or have you seen it so far?
I've definitely seen it. There's other teams out there that certainly do it, and you can look at certain racetracks where they're all pretty close around each other. It's similar to Formula One. You look at a Red Bull and they're around each other, or vice versa. So it's the same concept.
Has there been a moment this year where you thought, man, it'd be nice to have Kevin here for the meeting, and we're missing his wisdom?
Honestly, it was really great to lean on him, but at the same time, there's been some really productive conversations that we've had this year in our group between the four of us, and I feel like that's between the body and some of those conversations. It's also going to help us. It was time. I don't know how to really put this, but man, he carried it for so long, right? How are we supposed to carry it? How do we find our direction? And, I know Josh and I both, we talked to Kevin,
sure,
and we raced for Kevin. But this is sink or swim. Figure it out. You can't always keep going back to Dad, right? So.
Is it nice? He's a franchise guy, right? So sometimes things what Kevin wants, the way what Kevin wants. But now is it nice to kind of feel like maybe you can kind of shape the direction a little bit towards everyone else a little bit better, or, you know, does that make sense?
I don't know. You answer that one.
Yeah, I
He wasn't
don't.
there last year.
I
Yeah.
know, but he understands racing. Like, he
Yeah.
can answer that question as good as I can.
I don't know. I just feel like just the philosophy itself, I feel like it's changed, right? And everybody's just seems like they're just more motivated to work together and being open-minded. And I mean, everybody's really done a really good job of that, I feel like. And I think, like Ryan said, what we want to see is just the consistency, right? Like, the reason that I feel like everybody's searching for their balance and speed and to get better, right? So one week, one car might hit it better than the others because we're not all the same, because we're all going, we're working together, but still, hey, you try this, hey, you try that, kind of from what I see. And so, yeah, I don't know. I mean, I'm sure it's a lot different, but, I think change was needed.
Josh, Sunday's finish moved you above Hocevar in the standings, and do you keep tabs on the Rookie of the Year race, and where does that rank in terms of importance for what you guys want to accomplish this year? Yeah,
it's definitely was a goal of ours for sure, right? So we want to get as many points as we can and give ourselves the best opportunity to win that award. And kind of like I said before, I think the potential's there. We felt like it really, what we had Sunday night and what we had at Bristol, we feel like those nights are in front of us. We just got to figure out how to get there week in and week out, right? And it's gonna take some time to get there, but I feel like the potential's there to keep getting better and running well, and we just got to figure it out and go do it.
Ryan, you mentioned that you guys have had a ton of speed on super speedways. Is there a science or something that you guys haven't been doing as far as like closing one of those races out and getting one of the SHR cars to victory lane?
I mean, that's a great question. It is so tough. I would say our cars drive really well, and obviously they're fast. But if you lose track position in that final stage and you aren't in the top 5 or top 10, probably not going to have a shot at winning that race. But then at the same time, if you are in the top 5 or top 10, there's a pretty good chance that the wreck's going to happen in 2nd or 3rd place, because that seems to be where it's been over the past few years. So some of my best finishes on a super speedway have come when I've been completely out of the race in the final 10 laps. I've either gotten a penalty or came off pit road and lost the draft, and they wreck with 10 to go, and you just end up in a good situation. But, as far as I don't think any of us can really do anything different as far as working together. I think it's just understanding the momentum. You and your spotter have to be really keyed in with each other, and understanding when to move lanes and how to stay up front. Sometimes you can just end up there just by being patient and staying in a lane, but the real craft is when you get there, you got to stay there.
What did you guys see out of Pollard on Saturday?
I was happy he finished 6th, right? I texted him, and I haven't actually talked to him after it just to get his thoughts, but it's definitely a lot different racing on this tire and everything than racing a super late model or a modified. There's some things that you can do in the other type of cars and manhandle the race car more than you can these. So I thought he did great for his first time, and all the expectations that everybody, and I'm sure the pressure that he was putting on himself, and to go out and they did a good job, and he kept the fenders on it. Like, you see a lot of people go out for the first time in their first race and they rip the nose off the thing. So that's experience. That's a racer, and I was happy for him.
Josh?
Yeah, no, I agree with Ryan. I enjoyed. We went up in the stands and watched, and spent a lot of time watching him kind of work his way through the pack. And yeah, I think, like I said, I was just happy to see him get a good result. I know how hard it is being in those kind of one-off situations, right? And the amount going on and the information you're trying to take in so fast and learn as quick as you can, and then you throw in pit road and the restarts and stuff, right? I think that's where he would probably say, like, it didn't look like they had a great day on pit road. and I'm sure that he looks back at the restarts wishing that he could have done a couple things different to get a better result. But ultimately, you know, they played the strategy right, and it looked like towards the ends of the runs he was one of the better cars, which, you know, was a good job for him. And like I said, I was excited to see it, right? I think it's just cool. You know, I think for him, you know, it's not – I'm honestly a little surprised he did it, to be honest. You know, I mean, he's a legend in my eyes, right? Like, I'm not too sure that, you know, those situations, right, your career and your legacy and what people think of you, right? Like, if he goes and runs that race and it goes bad, which is a possibility, right, because he has no practice and no experience and, you know, all that to go along with it, you know, do people look at him differently because of a one-off race, right? Like, what's the risk versus the reward? So I was impressed that he went out and did it, and like I said, I'm just glad he got a good result and had a good time.
And similarly, you've known Carson for a long time, and he's not the veteran that Bubba is, but what can you tell us about Carson and his work ethic and drive heading into his debut? Yeah,
Carson's, you know, got a lot of talent, right? And I've worked pretty closely with him. He was kind of the one that took over for me outside, you know, from the Junior Motorsports Late Model program. It took a little time for us to get that figured out, and, you know, he stepped into that role and has done a really good job. You know, I'm really, really excited to see how he does, right? I think he's got a bright future. I think he's got a lot of talent. He races really well. I've already had a couple conversations with him. I've probably been a little bit more intentional of helping him versus some other people just because of how he is away from the track and how he's been, you know, his work ethic and the appreciation he has for his opportunity, right? So I'm probably going to be, you know, I'll probably be right there when he's practicing just in case he needs anything. And, you know, like I said, hopefully he has a good day.
You guys have said the leaders are kind of handicapped by the guys making runs on the outside before a start. Do you think a longer restart zone would allow the leader more legal space to kind of judge those runs?
I don't know. I mean, it seems pretty. I mean, I think it's right.
I'm gonna be honest with you, man.
I don't.
You guys, we can answer this 10 or 20 different ways, but you're gonna get the same thing, or ask us 10 or 20 different ways.
Sooner or later, somebody's gonna jump it and get called, and then everybody's gonna back off. You know, it's just gonna be a game for as long as racing exists.
I think the biggest thing is police it the same way at the end of the day, and he was a leader, man. Like.
Yeah.
I don't know.
So he went if he went 3 feet early, somebody will go 4 feet early, and they'll get called, and everybody will be like, "Oh."
Do you think they should add in NASCAR's judgment to the rule? Because right now the rule doesn't have that. It just says it has to start within that restart zone. If it doesn't, then it goes to the flagman.
Look pretty close to me.
Yeah,
I don't know.
Man, yeah.
I don't know. This is.
If he started in the middle of 3 and 4, then we can have a real conversation about it. But we're talking within a half car length. You know what I mean? He probably the distance. If you laid it out on the ground, that's probably the same amount of distance it was that he went early. So when you're driving to your car and you go at that stoplight, just think about that. You know, I don't know. It's just.
Do you think people would be more upset today if there would be more conversation if it was called and the win was taken away from him?
No, because it was him. If it was one of us, people wouldn't even think about it.
Yeah.
Honestly.
Yeah.
People, it's subjective, right? If it's myself or Ryan going for our first win, are you going to really call it because they went 2 feet early? I don't know. I mean, that would be.
It's kind of like earlier this year, we had a free pass. We were in position to get the free pass, and we didn't get it because we were involved in the caution at Daytona. And Kyle Busch, I believe, got it at Atlanta when he turned the I don't know. I'm just saying sometimes it can be subjective.
Josh, can you answer the question earlier about just what are the keys to racing Martinsville and what should fans watch for at Martinsville?
Yeah, I just think Martinsville is just one of those historic racetracks that I think we all love going to. A lot of us do, and it's very technical, right? Like how you brake and the lines you use, and how you attack the corners. But I think the biggest thing that I think when I think Martinsville is like even going back to being a kid, like there's always the chance of the unexpected at a place like Martinsville. So late race restarts and bumping runs and beating and banging. I think that's what we all look forward to.
Based on Richmond and Phoenix, are we going to see more continued improvement on Martinsville and getting that track back to where we all want it to be?
Man, I'm going to be honest with you. It just depends on what direction we have this week as far as tire wear and temperatures. And looking at temperatures, it's probably going to be tough to pass. But
Yeah.
when has Martinsville never been, not been tough to pass? I
Yeah.
mean, really, at the end of the day, it doesn't matter what you go there with. If you're in a late model stock or a modified, if you don't have a really good car, you're probably not going to pass many cars, right? So I think the biggest thing is to really emphasize here is the field's closer than it's probably ever been. It's not easy to pass. So you need to get your car driving to your liking to be maneuverable and go where they aren't. And if you're able to do that, yeah, you're going to see some passing out of a few guys. But outside of that one, it's going to be good strategy, get track position, and keep it.
Ryan, the last couple of years at play tracks, we've seen wild 3-wide racing, and since the introduction of the next gen car, you ask drivers like, why is that the case? They say, well, fuel saving, and that allows people to come from the back, go 3 wide.
Yeah.
Is there anything else besides like the next gen car that's allowed that just the play tracks having such wild and intense racing?
At the end of the day, it's a show. So we can ultimately make it look a certain way. Daytona, I think back to stage 1, all of us saving fuel, and it ended up playing strategies, all out. Like we ended up not pitting, and it didn't work out for us, but it very well could have if it was 5 or 3 laps shorter. But I'll use Kyle Busch. I think I saw an interview he had that it's frustrating as a driver not going and not racing, and all you're doing is looking at your fuel percentage, throttle percentage on your dash, trying to keep it there to make sure that when we come down pit road, we only have to take 3 seconds of fuel instead of 5 seconds of fuel. And I don't know. I feel like that whole style of racing has certainly taken me out of a few races by losing track position. But certainly, I don't know. I mean, I wish either we did something different with the stages or whatever it may be to where that didn't have as much of an effect on how you had to race those races.
All right, we have time for one more, so we'll go ahead and wrap up. Go ahead. Did you have another question?
I was going to see Josh any thoughts on that as well.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely evolved to a lot different style of racing than since some of the other series. I don't know how you fix it. Maybe shorter races, or just in the stage lengths. Hopefully, where it's not as valuable, I'd say would be the first things that come to mind.
Yeah, that's the truth. Sorry. Yeah.
All right. Everybody good? Okay, John, go ahead. We'll close with you.
Josh, I was curious, is SHR and this new team dynamic, is that, I guess, the ideal spot for you for your rookie season? Because I know at other organizations in years past, the younger guys may be more hesitant to speak up with their thoughts when they have, 1 or 2 champions in the building.
Yeah, I mean, it's been a great fit for me. I feel like the dynamic with the team and my teammates, I think, have all went really well. I think that, we're all trying to work together to get better. I've really enjoyed working with Rodney in that 4 team. I mean, Rodney's been just a great asset for me going into this, right? Having his experience. So, yeah, I feel good about everything we're doing. It's going to take a little time to get where we want to be, but like I keep saying, the potential's there. We've ran well already. We've had good finishes. I had good finishes last year. It's just going to take time to build the consistency to be where we want to be week in and week out.
All right.
Brad, from a broad sense, what all did you guys learn last weekend with the combination of the wet weather tires, the updated short track package that you can use as data heading forward?
I hesitate to say we learned anything, strikingly new. I think that I was impressed by the speed that wet weather tire has. It's really fast. We ran some laps that were as fast as we ran in the race on the wet weather tires. So I thought that was really interesting. But I hesitate to say there's any other key learning beyond that. I think we've probably gotten into a good enough repetition now with the wet weather tire where we know what we're going to know.
Is it time for a repave there?
I don't know. I don't see necessarily how a repave would dramatically affect the race there. but I've been wrong before. I like that the track wears the tires and does all those things. I honestly think if the 20 car didn't get the pit road speeding penalty, that was going to be a heck of a race, because I think he would have raced a 19 for the win, and we wouldn't be talking about any of the things we seem to be talking about this week. So there's some circumstances involved in all those things, but I hesitate to say that track needs a repave.
How we know Steve Newmark is obviously heavily involved in charter negotiations. What are the conversations like with him in terms of what's going on? Are you abreast fully? Do you want to be abreast fully?
Yeah, I mean, I've got a pretty good feel for it. I can't say that I'm every day working on it. In fact, I can say the exact opposite. I'm not every day working on it where he is. It's an important conversation for the industry, and I think ultimately we'll end up in a good place. We're just not there today.
Is it frustrating to you? I mean, the sentiment from a lot of folks involved in this on both sides is frustration that this isn't resolved. From your perspective, where are you at on this?
I don't know, maybe I'm fighting bigger fires, but this is not on the top of my list of things to be concerned about. I think ultimately we'll get to Daytona next year, and this thing will be resolved by then. It doesn't have to be resolved till then. Naturally, everybody wants to come to a deal of whatever they think is fair. Fair in this case is probably going to be when both sides are unhappy, and we haven't reached that yet.
You noted there's so many things that you're having to do, and obviously there's so many things you've got to do since you got there and turning things around. And I'm sure maybe this item is not as high on the list, but look at around the sport and look at how teams are developing drivers. If you look at last year's championship 4, and I think was it 2 or 3 of those guys, 3 of those guys came, through the ranks of a certain organization, playing through obviously Ford, Penske, Bell through Toyota, Gibbs, and Byron through Hendrick, and even the year before that, 2 of the Final 4 guys. So there is a trend of development. I know this isn't the mid-2000s when everybody had money and there were all these development programs, but as you see all these younger drivers now, we're seeing 17, 18, 19-year-old kids racing and with some very big programs. Where does that kind of fall into some of the things that you have to look at, maybe not for today, but certainly as part of your 2, 3, 5-year plan to keep your organization strong? Or if you have the old Robert Yates philosophy is, I don't want a development program because I want to make my cars as good as possible, and some people want to be in it.
I think when the NASCAR switched to the rule where drivers could only run half a dozen races in the Xfinity Series, and maybe the unintended consequences, but consequences nonetheless were the Cup owners significantly reducing their involvement in the series, and then the driver level not maintaining that same level. It's become harder and harder to have any expectations of bringing in a rookie driver from those series and expecting any level of success from them. I would say that we're probably reverting more back to a olden days motto of 70s, 80s, and 90s, where it does not make sense at all to bring a development driver into a program unless there's some other consideration outside of their talent. I think it makes a lot more sense to allow some of the other teams to pay the piper and for that driver to gain the reps and experiences there, where that wasn't the case 10, 15 years ago. Perhaps that'll change. There's active conversations on the future of the Xfinity Series and where it goes with the car, and the amount of races that the drivers can run, and that could flip that on its hat. But as it stands today, that's not the scenario. And I would say that the value proposition to bring a young driver into Cup is not very high.
I'm curious also, what's needed to be a successful driver these days? When you look back when you came in, how much is it? I know there's still a human element. You still got to, do certain things. But how much has the requirements or what you need to do as a driver change to be successful now as compared to when you were a rookie? And I guess I would say, if you were somebody that was coming up and having that success that you were having at one point, would you hire yourself today? Would you, your younger self, be ready for this type of racing?
Yeah, I think it's, for a young driver, it's gone from, run as many races as you can, specifically Xfinity Series, truck, to now it's study as hard as you can because you don't have any practice and you don't have any of those things. So, and there's a lot more administrative heavy work to do than when I started in the sport. You could learn by doing before. Now you got to learn more from studying. And it's a different type of learning environment that I think undoubtedly favors and different mentalities and different talent levels.
Chris Gale said when talking about Ty Gibbs that it's even more difficult now because he can't tailor the car like he could pre-next gen. So I'm curious, is that in the next gen era, do you have to give rookies more time, not just because of no practice, but the fact that there's probably fewer tools to get the car to that driver's strength?
Yeah, I think the next gen conversation is a part of a broader picture of, you look at the sum of all the parts, whether it be the cup owners kind of starting to leave the Xfinity Series or the limitation to the amount of races the drivers they can run and the next gen car. I think you probably add those three together and take away practice. Is probably the fourth one. And that's definitely a conversation changer for sure. But I would hesitate to point finger at just one. It's just, it's kind of the macroeconomics of it. It doesn't make a lot of sense right now. And it does push out the timeline of any expectations you can reasonably have on a young driver. I mean, I was on Fox and doing the Race Hub thing last week, and we were talking about William Byron, and he's had 2 or 3 really good years, and it took him a minute to remember that he's on his 7th season. And you're like, wow, is that the new standard? Is it 6, 7 years? Maybe it is. And I think you combine all those conversations and say that's probably why.
You talked about the past, you'd like to see RFK to expand one day. Curious where you at in those plans, and could you see a path to adding a third full-time team for 2025?
Yeah, I mean, we would need the right kind of storm to brew with charter availability and partner availability. I think there's some opportunities with some talent out there, but the other 2 pieces realistically have to come first.
Brad, in a couple weeks when we go to Talladega, how has the next gen car changed how you can get from through the pack to the front at a track like that, and how has it changed how you can control a race once you get to the front?
I would say the racing with the next gen car has become significantly more about fuel and fuel saving on the speedway races. And in some ways, that makes it easier to get to the front because there's a lot of guys saving fuel. In other ways, it makes it harder to stay up front because when the pit cycle happens, if you don't execute it perfectly, and if you need more fuel than others, you lose the track position. So there's parts to like and parts to not like about it. I think it's just different. I felt like with the old car, the old car was more side draft dependent, harder to save fuel with, and those types of things. So it was a different type of racing, and the racing just continues to evolve. The way the manufacturers have really bonded together, evolved the racing again. And so as it continues to morph, there's not really a clear playbook to being able to win those races other than to execute the last pit stop and be up front in the end.
In 2021 at Talladega was your last victory. As a guy who's a former champion, won 35 times, you've been close multiple times since then, but how do you kind of deal with the frustrations and emotions of trying to get back to victory lane?
I just focus on the process, not the outcome. I focus on doing all the right things, trying to help everybody I can, and obviously execute on my end. And when I'm not driving the race car, being a servant leader to help everybody else build the best they can, and then you kind of let the results speak for themselves. So I'm just really process focused, and in that light, I don't get too high or too low.
Do you think once you get
lift off your shoulders?
I hesitate to always explain how I would feel in a moment that hasn't happened. But I can't see how it would be a bad thing.
When you talk about the process and all that hard instead of focus on the outcome, what are some of the key things that you're focusing on?
Well, week to week, that obviously varies. Right now I'm focused on Martinsville and what it's going to take to have the lap time and speed to compete with the Gibbs cars. Right now I think they're dominant. They've won, 4 of the last 5 or something to that effect, and they've won them all honest. They haven't really kind of stole a race. They've had the speed throughout the whole race with one of their cars to just control it. And that's where I want to be. I want to see our team in a spot where we have the speed to control races. I thought towards the middle to end of last year we had that a couple times, and Chris was able to capitalize with a win, and I wasn't able to capitalize with a win, but I was able to, score a lot of points and make a strong playoff push. So that's where we want to be. We're not as strong right now as we were at that time, but I feel like it's on the tip of our tongue, and I want to go get that.
We're 5 forwards in the top 12 last week, honest. But is that? Most of us say when you look at favorites, you're not looking at forwards, and then if there's 5 in the top 12. Is that?
Yeah, I thought the Fords executed really well, but I don't think they had the raw speed the Gibbs car had. The 20 car the last 2 or 3 races has had significantly more raw speed than the field, and he's been able to win one of them, but he probably should have won the last 2. That's the level that I think if we had our execution with their speed, we'd be winning multiple races.
You touched on it over the weekend, Brad, about maybe not completely understanding the dark horse just yet.
Mm-hmm.
Was there something that you all saw on paper during the off season or in the numbers that hasn't translated maybe to the racetrack, or what's the difference so far?
Yeah, Kelly, I would hesitate to give away specifics because I know that'll just make it through the halls of everybody else's race teams. But certainly there were some things that we found that we don't think are realistic for good and bad. And I think we've got a mitigation plan around them that'll come into effect in the next few weeks and hopefully show an improvement for us.
So when you make a switch like this, or when a manufacturer makes a switch like this, do you feel like 6, 7 races in, you guys are kind of where you expected or should be, or do you feel like you're too far behind the competition?
No, we're not where we want to be. We want to be the fastest car. We want to be leading a lot of laps and scoring a lot of stage points, and then relying on great execution to capitalize with the finishes that come with that speed. And that's not been where we're at. I think I've only got 1 start in the top 15 or 16, so we're not showing the pace in qualifying, but we're executing well enough, at least in some of the races, to get some good finishes. We need to put all that together. And so if we can put the speed together with that, we'll be in good shape. But, we want that to be week 1, not week 8 or 9 or whatever that might be.
Brad, a little bit more generally, I've heard you talk throughout your career a bit about how much you've embraced social media over the years. And, now being, already kind of a long-time driver in the sport, how have you really noticed from when you entered the sport and first got into racing, how between social media, marketing, how the sport has really evolved to where we are now?
Well, like the competition on the track, the things off the track are changing too, and we're getting into more and more a place where our partners value social media to some level degree at the same level of our media rights, and so being able to execute for them is really important, and we hope to do it in a way that's fun and organic that our fans love as well. And I think there's some really great creative people out there in the not just RFK marketing team, but all the other marketing teams that are finding ways to do that. But ultimately, it's our business model is to raise revenue from partnerships. 60-70% of our business model comes from that. And social media is becoming, as important as how you ran on the race day to our partners. And so it's starting to demand the bandwidth of the race teams and race companies to be able to satisfy that need and desire from our partners.
Do you expect Sunday to look more directionally positive like we saw a little bit in November at Martinsville too?
Yeah, backing up to this past weekend at Richmond, I thought practice went really well. I thought the cars could really pass in practice, and then we got into a night race scenario, and the track locked down on the bottom, and you couldn't pass. I think it would have been even worse with last year's aero package. So I suspect with Martinsville that the cars struggled to pass there for about 40 or 50 laps, and then the tires would start to degrade, and you'd see some good passing. And I suspect that'll just happen even sooner this time around at Martinsville.
Would you be good but depending on what happens at Martinsville, would you advocate for any additional changes to the aero package for short tracks and road courses this year, or do you feel like what is set should be set for the rest of the year?
Yeah, I think we're kind of past the point of making any major changes to the car. You make changes at the start of the year, and drive some associated cost and engineering demands, and it's kind of like at some point you got to just go race it, and stick to it and commit to it, and then reevaluate. And I think NASCAR does a good job of that, of constantly reevaluating and being careful with how they make changes to not just kind of be flying from the seat of our pants. So I would feel comfortable just kind of taking what we got and sticking with it throughout the year.
And when you said a plan to mitigate some of the issues, like is that like are you talking about like any sort of body change or rule change, or is it more just things that you can do internally?
I'm sorry, which part? I lost context.
When you said that, when you were talking about the Fords, you said you didn't want to really give up too much, but you said that there's like kind of a plan to mitigate.
Yeah, I would say it's across multiple facets, but obviously the change to the dark horse was a big change, so I would say it's primarily that.
When the belief, or it's been said when it comes to practice, that it's the costs, right? Cost containment helps the teams, that kind of thing. But I've heard other owners say they're okay with adding a little bit more practice. I'm curious your perspective on that as a team owner. Would you like to see more practice, or are you okay with where it is now because of the cost containment?
Yeah, I mean, I don't see how we saved any money getting rid of practice. Not from a team perspective. Maybe there was some savings otherwhere in the industry that I'm not aware of, but there hasn't been a significant cost savings. We've reallocated in a lot of ways to other demands, and it's hard for me to understand the value proposition today to not have practice.
So would you be in favor of expanding it to some degree, maybe not to where the level it was at pre-COVID, but something more than the current state?
Yeah, I'm more than comfortable with it. I would say I'm probably on the advocate side.
Can you give a little more context about how that may affect the racing? Because I know some of the smaller teams, like Front Row, they say having shorter practices help keep them more competitive, and that they would be concerned about losing any advantage they have if they went to further periods.
Yeah, I mean, I can't speak for why they would feel that way, but I can speak for how I feel. I feel like we've put a lot of money and time into race car simulation. Whether that's simulating the car statically with how it would perform aerodynamically and with consideration of other things, or whether it's kind of a multi-body physics model, which is simulating the car going around the track, so very dynamically. I mean, we continue to make a lot of investments, and we're not the only ones. Really, everybody's making those investments, and although I hesitate to say that we wouldn't still want to keep those in a practice environment, there's undoubtedly the conclusion that we wouldn't have needed to invest so heavily had we not lost practice. I feel like it's never a good idea for our sport to, when in cost consideration mode, move spending away from things that our spectators can enjoy and view, or our media can cover and discuss, into areas that they cannot. And I think if you look at the allocation of resources, that's clearly what happened.
Why do command centers mean so much, other than, I understand everybody has it, if you don't have it, there's a sense you fall behind, but what is the value if everybody's got it and has similar smart rocket scientists, punching numbers and passing along information? At what point is there still value? At what point does that become, I don't want to say a waste, because I don't want to downplay what everybody's doing, but
Yeah, I mean, I think we're seeing significant value from it. I assume everyone else is, or they wouldn't invest in it.
Yeah.
The ability to have more eyes on the race, to better understand what's happening. When I sit in the TV booth for the Xfinity race, it's jarring to me how many different scenarios are unfolding at the same time. And, I have a lot of empathy for the producers and directors that cover the races, because, like, what do you cover? There's, like, 20 stories happening at the same time, whether that's a battle on pit road or a battle on the racetrack. Like, all these different things are happening simultaneously. And as it is for TV or for a viewer who goes to a racetrack, or spectator who goes to a racetrack where you're not even sure what to watch at any given time, there's so much going on. It's the same way for the teams. And so what you're hopeful for is that you build out a team that can, using various technologies and resources available to them, they can find things and see things and communicate in real time items that might be of high value. And there's a power law to that, which is that the more you can see, the more opportunity there is to find the needle in the haystack that can improve your day. Some days that resource can be what differentiates a winner and a loser. And that's what we're in the business of doing, is being winners. So if there's a resource that can differentiate us, we're going to chase it pretty hard.
That being said, I remember talking to some different people times. There was a discussion: would it ever make sense to move crew chiefs off pit road, because that's in essence the first seat in the house. Other than, I know you have all the screens, and move them up. If there's an empty suite or biased suite, or put them up higher in the stands, or make a push to see if you can put them up there with the spotters or something like that, so they have that view that you talk about. Is it ever going to come to a point where it makes sense, whether it's a crew chief or have somebody else as the, like in football, the assistant head coach? I mean, look, you've got football coaches up in the box, you got football coaches on the field. Why wouldn't it be done? Or maybe you're already doing it and not going to tell us.
Well, what's tough with the roster rules is, honestly, we don't have enough support behind the wall during a pit stop. So I don't think you're going to see a crew chief move because of the roster rules and the need to support the pit crew behind the wall, whether it's rolling tires or whatever the particular task might be. So I don't suspect that's going to change solely because of those rules, which is kind of self-policing. And I think it's probably a good rule to keep us from doing those things and driving more cost. But I think as a whole, there's probably some room for a bigger disruption if that was not the case.
Going into Martinsville, what gets you excited about that? How do you approach it? And what should the fans look for as they watch either in person or on TV to really take it in the right way?
What I love about Martinsville is just how tight the racing is. We have some racetracks where it seems like we get really spread out, but that never happens at Martinsville. And that hurts some feelings along the ways. I've been on both sides of that. But I think it's such a unique challenge to race in a track that small with so many competitive cars, and a race that's pretty long. It's a 500 lap race in the fall. I think it's 400 in the spring, and those are long races. You get out of the car and you feel it. And so I think it's a great ticket. It's one of my favorite places to go, and I love watching the races when I'm not in them, whether it be the truck or the Xfinity race. And there's a nostalgia that kind of comes with that track of it feels the closest to me of what I imagine a cup race would have felt 30 or 40 years ago of any venue.
Very nice.
All right, one final question. Anybody?
I'll ask one.
How will there always be arguments over restarts? Like, I mean, I can't remember. I mean, I can always remember arguments over restarts. I mean, is that just the nature of a restart, that there's always going to be arguments on calls on whether jumps or
yeah? I mean, in the Xfinity race, Bob, there was a scenario I think where Almirola had the lead and he went late in the box, and there were some people that were mad about that. When there's competition, there's generally going to be differing viewpoints when it comes to tactics and results, and that kind of goes with the territory. Somebody put a video up the other day of when Tony Stewart jumped the restart at Watkins Glen from 20-some years ago, and I was thinking about that, like how far we've come, where now jumping the restart is based on 3 or 4 feet, when back then it was based on 100 yards seemingly. So it just shows that some things will just never go away.
When the fact that you haven't run Martinsville yet seems just so weird in a Cup car when that's kind of been maybe your bread and butter. So I'm curious, how much are you either looking forward to this race, finally getting a chance to race Martinsville in a Cup car?
Yeah, no, I'm definitely excited for it. I feel like it should be another really good opportunity for us to run well. It seems like our cars have been strong at the short tracks. I think we've ran a couple of them now to build some notes and work off some things. So I think it should be a good opportunity to go run and see how we do.
It seems like the last few weeks you guys really kind of started Bristol qualifying well, racing well, competitive. Has there been something that's like changed or clicked, or is it just kind of the way things have fallen?
Yeah, I think it's just a little bit of momentum building. I think we're working together, figuring each other out a little bit more. I'm getting more comfortable getting reacclimated to the next gen car. But more than anything, I think that we've just had good cars the last couple weeks, I feel like, especially at the short tracks. So it's just going to take time, man. I mean, I told Rodney this not too long ago, right? Like, Kevin was 800 and something starts into racing, right? And I'm only in the teens. So it's going to take a little time for me to get acclimated, to eliminate some of the mistakes that I've made at the start of the season. But I think we're already seeing the potential's there. The speed can be there. We just got to start, start executing that, figuring out, how to be more consistent, and I think we'll be fine.
This is for both of you. Despite the SHR struggles the last few years, Martinsville, or tracks like Martinsville and Richmond, have been areas of strength for you guys. So if you guys look at Martinsville, kind of circle it and say, listen, this is an opportunity for us. Particularly you, Ryan, you were there fast last year as well. It's an opportunity to go there and really have an opportunity to win.
Yeah, I would say so. Much like Josh just said, when we hit it, it's definitely there. It's capable. We showed that kind of at the first Martinsville last year, and having that speed, and then unfortunately it comes down to not speeding and losing that track position. And so going back, we are on a different tire. We're on a different aero package. So there's a lot of things that are different, but it's still the same track. So we just need to, our group is make some adjustments to be that much better. But we've, SHR as a whole has definitely had speed at Martinsville. I mean, we saw it last year with Eric and Chase there at the end of the race. And so just, keep trying to be better.
Josh, last year at Richmond, you worked through the field to a second place finish in the number 9 Chevy. And what are some kind of differences you've noticed specifically at Richmond, coming off of it, obviously now, being in the 4th route this year?
Yeah, I mean, I think that, for one, Richmond's been a good track for me. Obviously with that result as well, but even going back to the Xfinity car. But this weekend was obviously a lot different. Like last year, we didn't even practice or qualify and started in the back. And there was a lot of varying strategies and a lot going on and we were on the definitely we benefited really well. They had a really good strategy, but this week felt different, right? I mean, we obviously practiced well. I felt like that I was pretty confident that our draw in qualifying hurt us, but we practiced really well and we applied that to the race. So, I mean, the cars are a little bit different. I think the biggest thing is just I'm getting more comfortable driving the same car every week and working with the same group every week and being able to kind of adjust myself to the car and just have laps. So, I think, like I said, I think we're getting where we need to be.
Ryan, can you give me a sense of the comfort level at the shop with the new Ford as opposed to last year?
Well, I think you guys have touched on it. From a 1.5 mile standpoint, we've only really been to one, right? So Las Vegas, no, it was really fast. The 14 qualified really well. So the potential is definitely there. I would say from a morale standpoint, we want to be consistently talking about the 4 of us running top 10, top 5. Like that's the goal for every race team. and not just have some outliers here and there. And I think that's what we're all trying to do, is work as a group and, have some real consistency.
Ron, you, the last week was the first week where you didn't finish better than you qualified. The first 6 weeks you finished better than where you qualified. So is that a qualifying thing, or is that part of the learning process of that new body?
I would say just we didn't go in the right direction. In the wets, we were pretty good. I drove up to 10th, right? And we put slicks on, and reality kind of hit us pretty hard. We fell, and we just weren't good. One thing I will say is it was nice having Josh be so fast, because we have access to see what they did and make our car better and see what direction we need to go. Man, when he blew my doors off going forward, I looked at it and I'm like, wow, that thing looks really good. And for a driver and I'm sure our team to be able to rely on that and to make ourselves better for the second Richmond, that makes me feel really optimistic, rather than just having 4 of us that, if we all ran 15th, right? So we can all be better, but certainly was unfortunate and frustrating.
But in general this year, I mean, you're finishing better than where you qualified. Is that a qualifying thing, you think, or is that something that feel like you guys are doing during the race that's?
Well, I always feel like we make our car better throughout a race, throughout the whole weekend. From where we typically start practice to how we finish a race, we always net forward. Qualifying, for whatever reason, has hindered our 41 team all of last year, and this year we've always been playing, we probably averaged the 30th to 25th or whatever it may be, but then we move forward throughout the race. So certainly the focus going forward this year has been qualifying to get that track position, because you guys hear it on TV, you emphasize it. Track positions are really hard to get, and when you do get it, you don't want to lose it. So it's crazy to think. Certainly it's kind of been frustrating for us this year, because there's been races where, we've been better than where we finished, but we're still ahead of where we were last year. So, yeah.
Ryan, going into Martinsville, how do you wrap your mind around what you need to do? You're a short track guy. Both of you really could answer this question as well. How do you wrap your mind around the type of racing and the feel of Martinsville, and what's sort of your mental prowess on that? And then sort of as an addition, what should fans watch for as they watch all of this, whether they're at home or watching on TV?
Yeah. Well, one thing I was actually just talking to Josh about in the other room, we were talking about Richmond, and it's a short track. When he went by me, and when I watched him being able to go high, go low, move out of people's dirty air and make speed, I said to him, I'm like, man, that's just like you and I, what we want to do when we're driving our late model stocks or late models or modifieds, So I really enjoyed seeing the capability that they had and what we're capable of as SHR. But going into Martinsville, we need that same thing. We need the maneuverability. You need to roll the center fast. So or just qualify out front and stay out there, certainly. But it's, with this new tire and this aero package, I think it's going to be cooler. So I don't think we're going to have much rubber build from past experience with colder temperatures. But we also had some of that at Bristol, and we had a lot of wear, so I'm not really sure what to expect on that.
John, just to circle back to the conversation about the intermediates and the miles and a half, you haven't had an opportunity to race just one this year. When you look at Texas, what are some things that you guys feel like with the new car as a team that you can really learn from, or what are you trying to gain when you go back there in order to actually make positive gains and have speed moving forward?
Yeah, so these first 8 races, you've kind of gone to one of everything, right? And fortunate enough for us, other than Coda, I think we're all kind of still working on being better there. But fortunate enough for us, we had really fast super speedway cars. We had a car that was really fast on a mile and a half, and then obviously Josh was really fast at Richmond. So we just got to do our homework. We got to take a deep dive into what everybody's doing and just keep trying to do it better. Myself as a driver, our speed, all those things. The potential's there for sure.
Josh, when you look at a place like Texas, back to the mile and a half conversation, you're navigating a new crew chief, new team, getting activated next gen car. You haven't raced at Texas. How do you kind of just navigate all those different things as a driver from that perspective?
Yeah, I think it'll be tough, right? I think the intermediates are especially in the next gen, are a good bit different than what we had in the Xfinity car, just with the amount of throttle time and how they feel behind the wheel. So it's probably the biggest gap, I think, compared to what maybe some of the other style tracks are. But it's like Ryan said, right? It's just a thing. It's a new track. We just got to do our homework and try to bring the best car we can to the racetrack and just try to execute practice and qualifying and stay up front. Track position is going to be really important there too. So it's just going to be another learning process.